Hello and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to make an intra-Indonesian fusion dish I call Nasi goreng balado. Now, balado is a very important sambal and Padang food, but you will never find a Nasi goreng balado in Padang because the rice that they use in Padang is a different kind of rice and you would never make a Nasi goreng out of it. So, what I'm doing is I'm taking the sambal from Padang and I'm using it to make a nasi goreng much more like you would use in, say, Javanese food. This will probably strike a lot of people as wrong, maybe not, but it's a very delicious dish and very fragrant, spicy, though you can tone down the spice as much as you like. Anyway, as a quick note, sort of the rices that they use in Java are very much more sticky rices, so they're similar to like a jasmine rice or a kalros, while in Sumatra they tend to use these longer grain, fluffier rices, much more similar to a basmati rice. So in terms of texture, we're talking about very different things, and as a result, the use of next day rice tends to be a bit different also. So this is, as I say, sort of a fusion of dishes from between Indonesia regions. So I hope you enjoy it. So let's start with the ingredients. I have a plum tomato. I'm using a plum tomato because these are paste tomatoes, so they cook much more similarly to Indonesian tomatoes than any of the other varieties around here. Romas would be great. Some cherry tomatoes would probably work okay, but paste tomatoes are better than like salad tomatoes. Some lime leaves, shallot. The shallots in Indonesia are more round, but shallots in Indonesian are called bawang merah, which means basically like red onion, as opposed to bawang putih, which is garlic, and bawang bombay, which is what we call an onion. And then I have some red chili peppers. I put these in the freezer before, and I'm going to just chop these really finely. My next stage is I'm going to go ahead and prep these. I'm going to take the skin off of this and I'm going to cut it into pieces that will easily fit in a garlic press. And then I will chop this tomato. The main fat for the sambal is going to be coconut oil. In Indonesian cooking, typically everything's palm oil, but this is the closest that you can reasonably get as a consumer. As I've noticed and noted in some other videos, the ecological problems of palm oil don't really come primarily from home cooking. They come mostly from Western companies trying to replace hydrogenated oils with palm oils, or trying to replace biofuels with palm oils regionally. So my view on palm oil is that generally you're better off leaving that as a local resource for the local populations, but when it comes to a little bit of home cooking, if you find palm oil, it's not a terrible thing to use some. That doesn't mean we shouldn't have activism around trying to make sure that Western food companies maybe move off of it. Anyway, on to the main dish in 1 second. For the main nasi goreng, we will use more of the palm oil. We will use eggs. Chicken, I have about 6 ounces of chicken, 180 grams. With the skin is fine, but you can use boneless, skinless thighs if you want. Of course, day-old rice. It's highly recommended if you want to make a traditional fried rice of any sort, that you cook your rice a day ahead of time and you let it kind of harden and become sort of, much more absorbent. Otherwise, it will kind of turn to mush. There may be some ways around that, but those would be... I wouldn't recommend those terribly. Then finally some soy sauce. We call this ketchup asin in Bahasa, And in general, some of the sort of the Western soy sauces tend to be closer to Indonesian soy sauces than Chinese soy sauces are. So probably better not to use a tamari if you have to use something from a particular country and it's not Indonesia, then maybe the Japanese ones are a little closer. Finally, the garnish will be a fried egg and a sliced tomato and maybe a little bit more sambal. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and come back after stuff's prepped, and we can go ahead and get started on the sambal. So traditionally, you would start with whole shallots, whole chili peppers, and whole tomatoes, and you'd mill these on a grinding stone. I'm avoiding some of that by taking some alternate approaches here. These chili peppers have been frozen and now finely chopped. They're not going to quite dissolve as well as they would in a if I were to grind them, but they'll be pretty close. And then the tomatoes themselves will dissolve as we cook them. These I'm going to run through a garlic press as I get started. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off a piece of my coconut fat. And it doesn't have to be a huge amount, but, you know, just a bit. And we're going to go ahead and get our sambal started with that. So while my coconut fat is melting, I'm going to start feeding the shallot pieces through the garlic press. There we go. Let's just cut the last of that off. And there we have the shallots. Next up, I'm going to add the tomatoes. And the chili peppers. Now, as always, respect chili peppers. You get them on your skin. It may burn a bit. That's fine. It's not going to cause you harm. In go the lime leaves. But it is something worth noting. And I'm just going to stir this together. And now I'm going to turn this down from a high to a medium low. So I'm turning this all the way down from a 9 to a 3. I started off with a 9 because you need to get the wok hot, but now I'm going to just very slowly cook everything together until these really fully dissolve, and then I'm going to cook them until it's mostly dry. So now you can see this is the heat has gone way down, and the tomatoes are just starting to soften. The tomatoes are going to actually kind of dissolve like they do with pasta pomodoro. And then the whole mixture will slowly dry out as I continue to stir it. This can take 15-20 minutes, it can take an hour, it very much depends upon your tomatoes. The drier and pastier the tomatoes are, the shorter the cooking time. You can see the tomatoes just dissolve. This will just be a little bit longer until the tomatoes have dissolved. And then I'm going to slowly kind of reduce this for another 20-30 minutes until the sambal is ready. Now, one very important trick here is you can actually make a lot more of the sambal than you're going to use, and then save it, in the refrigerator for a couple of weeks. This also goes great on any kind of like roasted or fried food. So you can put it on, for example, roasted or fried eggplant. You can put it on like a chicken confit. You can put it on fried chicken livers. You can put it on pretty much whatever you like. This is one of the great Indonesian sambals. And this is a fairly easy way to make it in a Western kitchen without a grinding stone. And you can see now we kind of have a soupy mixture. This would be fine if I was putting it on, say, shrimp or chicken confit or eggplant. But for fried rice, we're going to cook this until it's a bit drier. So now you can see I have a really thick paste, and it's not even holding all the oil anymore. So I think this is good. I'm going to take it off. I'm going to put it in a bowl. And from there, we'll go ahead and get started on the main fried rice. I'll be back in just a few moments after I've moved this off. Now, let me just reuse the same pan. I'm not even going to wash it out because you know what? These flavors are all going back into the fried rice anyway. So I'm going to start with another 100 grams of coconut fat, roughly. Actually, it's probably, that may be more than I need. 1 second. I'm actually going to probably start with a bit less than that. Just a nice little slab like this. And I'm going to go ahead and let that melt. I can always add more coconut oil if I need to, but we don't necessarily need this to be super, super fatty. So once this is melted, and I'm going to turn the stove now up to about a 7. Then I'm going to add the eggs, and once the oil is hot, I will add the eggs. Once those are starting to cook well, I'll add the chicken, and then the sambal. So I've added actually, we can add a little more. This will be a total of about 50 grams of coconut oil. I'm going to make enough that I have leftovers and stuff, so you can see it starting to bubble. So now I'm going to add 2 eggs. Now, the reason why we cook the eggs before we add the sambal, I think, is that tomato is an emulsifier and so are egg yolks. So if we add those two together early on, or we add the tomatoes first, you have a possibility that, that all of the oil is going to end up bound up in the tomatoes, and then it's going to have implications for how the rest of the stuff cooks. Now, if you want to make a vegetarian option, just simply add more eggs and omit the chicken. That's what I would do. If you want to be crazy, add Indonesian meatballs, cut up. That would probably be okay. I haven't ever seen them add much in the way of vegetables to this, but or to fried rices generally. So even with the tomatoes, this is kind of a heavier vegetable version than you used to see. So that's all cooking nicely. So I'm going to start with some sambal. I can always add more, but it's much easier to add more than take stuff out. I'm going to stir that in. And as the eggs are nicely releasing the oil again, I'm going to add the chicken. And from here, basically, I'm making a chicken and egg and sambal stir fry. And I'm just basically going to cook this until everything is done. And you know what? I think I like this bolder. I'm going to add the rest of the sambal. So I'll come back when the chicken's cooked, and then we'll go to the next step. So now this is looking pretty well cooked, so I'm going to start adding the rice. And basically, the way I'm going to cook this rice in is I'm going to kind of break it up a bit. I'm going to mix it with these ingredients, and then I will just simply periodically stir it around so that as it warms up and breaks up, that it will kind of become sort of a nice mash of, well, not really a mash. I mean, you know what fried rice looks like. But I'll come back in a few minutes and you'll get to see. So it's been a few more minutes, and this is smelling pretty good. You can see the clumps of rice are breaking up. I don't really have to work hard to get them to fall apart. And this is already a little bit moist as a fried rice because the sambal's a bit more moist. Certainly when compared to the sambal matah that we did the previous fried rice video. In the meantime, this is getting pretty close, and you can see it's looking really good. Now, if you really don't tolerate spicy foods at all, you could try adding a very, very, very small amount of red bell pepper, but not nearly as much as you would like with chili peppers, because the flavor on those is a bit different. Anyway, I think we're ready for the next step, which is to season with soy sauce. Basically, you'll just add soy sauce to taste over the top. Stir it together. Now, how's that for a couple meals? All right. So next we'll cover the garnishing, and we'll go from there. So now for presentation, I'm just going to mold it gently with the spatula. Then I'm going to top it with a fried egg. And these are almost always cooked all the way through. And they are typically cooked in a vegetable oil, typically like a palm oil. Then I'm going to arrange some slices of tomato, and if I had them, I might put some cucumbers around it, just to kind of make it nice. And there we have our Nasi goreng balado. And now for the taste test. What really makes balado distinctive is this combination of shallots, chili peppers, and lime, along with the tomatoes. This is a wonderful flavor combination. This dish is absolutely delicious. I strongly recommend it. Enjoy. Selamat makan. Bon appetit. See you next week.